Will AWS still be here in the future? The short answer is no. The medium answer is kind of. And the long answer, well, that's the video. So let's get to it. I think we're in the middle of a massive change across the entire development industry. For a long time, companies have scaled up by taking the core teams focused on things like backend and frontend and growing those teams. But since what I'd honestly say is the Facebook era, we've moved away from that and towards small vertical teams. There might still be a backend engineer and a frontend engineer, or even a handful of them on a given team, but the team's no longer named after the technology. You don't have a giant backend team and a giant frontend team at Facebook. Instead, you have small vertical teams that solve specific problems and build solutions directly for the users. Those small teams have their own product managers, their own designers, their own front-end and back-end engineers. And sometimes they'll work with platform engineers that might help make it easier to deploy things and keep stuff consistent across big projects. But generally, the average engineer at one of these companies is working on a vertical team. We've seen Facebook adopt this model. We've seen Amazon adopt this model. We've seen Twitch adopt this model. That's where I became familiar with it. And we're seeing it become more and more common in the industry. On top of that, we're seeing more specialized solutions start to be formed. For the last however long we've been building software, we've been focused on making generic enough solutions to work for as many people as possible. Building software is hard, and the amount of time it took to make a solution to a problem made it hard to justify niching it to a specific group of people. You could build a solution that worked 9 out of 10 perfect for 40% of people, or you could make a solution that worked 5 out of 10 perfect for 90% of people. It makes so much sense to do the latter. Well, it did, until we started seeing those specialized solutions that are so much better for specific types of users. AWS gives a solution for the vast majority of developers and the vast majority of problems you could have trying to ship software. However, there are things that solve specific problems better. If you want to serve live video, sure, you can use AWS for that, and they have a video product within IVS. It's obnoxious to get set up, but the quality's really good. Or you can use Mux, a specialized video product that does just this. It is way easier to set up and get going, and man, the quality is pretty good too. Or we can look at something like web hosting. AWS has both the CDK and Amplify. There's some complex relationship there I don't feel like diving into. But you also have options like Vercel and Netlify. And with those solutions, you just sign in with GitHub, click a repo, and they'll deploy it on AWS for you. There's a lot of services that solve our problems better that are built on top of AWS. Theoretically, in the future, they could move off it, but it doesn't really affect you as an end user because you're just using this nice abstraction on top. And I don't think AWS can really compete with that. The amount of focus and dedication it takes to solve a problem near perfectly for a specific set of users isn't within the model of AWS. They're not trying to make perfect solutions. They're trying to make one-size-fits-most solutions. And as an industry, we're trying to get things done faster. If we go back to what I was saying before about those small vertical teams, they shouldn't have to rely on these platform teams. If you look at a place like Facebook, a lot of the platform team people are essential to those vertical teams' success, and they're constantly working back and forth. I know at Twitch, I was working with the browser clients team that managed the major repo for the core website and constantly pushing things, trying to make changes, get hooks adopted, and all that type of stuff. But we rely on these teams due to the complexity of the thing they are building on top of and the abstractions they're trying to give us. I think the future is not going to let that slide. The feeling of having a solution that perfectly solves your problem, nothing hits quite like it. The first time I felt this, it gave me the confidence to go from a multi-100-person company to a 10-person company, and then eventually to where I'm at now with a 2-person company. And I don't feel like we're moving much slower. If anything, in a lot of ways, we're moving faster because we're using these tools that have effectively abstracted that platform team. Vercel recognized that so many companies were forming this team just to get deploys right, that they built a product that does deploys better. As the industry gets more niche, I would expect more and more companies to not be focused on solving a problem for everybody, and instead be focused on solving a problem for a specific set of users they understand really well. As such, the theoretical profit of that company is much lower. Let's be realistic here. There isn't a world where Vercel makes more money than AWS. There isn't really even a world where Vercel makes as much money as AWS. They just don't cover as large of a set of customers. But if they have a smaller focused team and they solve those problems really well, they can still be an incredibly profitable company, a multi-billion-dollar company without too much struggle. I don't think we're going to see another company the size of Microsoft or Apple or Amazon anytime soon, if ever at all. That type of super growth of taking over a gigantic segment that every company relies on, that isn't the future. Because people can now build solutions so quickly for more specific users that you'll never pull them over. Nobody can take down AWS in a way that I would move over when I could use PlanetScale built on AWS, Vercel built on AWS, and all the other things I talk about on the channel all the time. It would be nearly impossible to build a solution that gets as ubiquitous as something like Amazon going forward. So when I say a future without AWS, I'm not saying something's going to replace AWS and become the new biggest thing. I actually think big things are going to be much smaller. And new companies going forward aren't going to reach these multi-$100 billion valuations. They're going to be lucky to unicorn. But I think we'll see many more of these smaller $100 million to $1 billion companies that have smaller teams solving problems really well, rather than these giant companies that are building teams that are bigger than the last two companies I worked at to solve some problems that only they face internally. It just doesn't seem realistic to me when a 5-person team can build an incredible focused product that a 500-person team would be able to solve that problem better. Smaller teams allows for more focus and agility, and tools like Vercel, PlanetScale, Clerk, Axiom, Upstash, and everything else we talk about here, they let you move so much faster. And that small team doesn't need to hire a bunch of platform people just to deploy and scale their apps anymore. Companies that are choosing to keep doing that themselves, companies that are deciding to roll their own infra teams and deploy Kubernetes to their 5 users, they're not going to be able to keep up, because a 2-person team auto-deploying when they merge via Vercel can solve their users' problems so much faster, build a tighter feedback loop, and result in better software and better solutions to the problems that users have. I firmly believe we will always move in the direction of what's best for the user. We might have ups and downs, but we'll always trend towards that. And I don't think AWS is the path there. That doesn't mean we're not going to be using AWS. It just means a small number of people will be using it and then selling us solutions built on top. My life's been much better since I haven't had to sign into the AWS console. I can't imagine a future where we keep doing it. Sure, they could go make it look much nicer, but that's not the issue here. It's one of focus and understanding of users' needs. AWS is going to be replaced by hundreds of companies building on top that solve the specific problems that you have now. And I think that's an exciting future. What do you think, though? Are you excited about a future where AWS is being replaced by all these weird, simpler, focused solutions? Or do you like having that AWS certification and the one-stop shop to solve all your problems? If you think that this solution is going to be way too expensive, well, I have quite the video there to tell you all about why it's actually cheaper than you expect. Thank you guys as always. Really appreciate it. Peace, nerds.